Daisha Banks stood at the window of the hospital room and looked out at the rainy March day. Beyond the glass, the outlines of the parking lot blurred as rare passers-by hurried from car to car, sheltering under umbrellas. Inside the room, silence reigned, broken only by the monotonous beeping of machines. But for Daisha, those sounds had fallen silent 3 days ago, when her mother's heart stopped beating forever. Ella Fawkes had lived for 62 years, working as a school librarian and never complaining about her health. The heart attack struck her suddenly, right in the library, as she was arranging books on the shelves. Daisha received a call from her mother's colleague during her lunch break at the hospital, where she worked as a nurse in the cardiology department. The irony of fate was cruel. Every day she helped save other people's hearts, but she couldn't save her mother's. Gavin gently placed his hand on his wife's shoulder. He knew that words were powerless now, so he just stood there, feeling her body tremble with suppressed sobs. In his 38 years, he had lost his father when he was 20, but then death had not come so suddenly. Cancer had given him time to get used to the inevitability. Now, Daisha's grief was as sharp as a knife. "I need to get her things from the house," Daisha said quietly, without turning around, "and make funeral arrangements. Pastor Davis already called and offered to hold the service on Saturday." "We'll do everything together," Gavin replied, squeezing her shoulder. "Don't rush. We have time." But time seemed to stand still for Daisha. The next few days passed in a fog. She mechanically went through the necessary steps, choosing a coffin, meeting with the funeral director, calling her mother's relatives and friends. Gavin took time off work to be there for her, but he felt helpless in the face of her grief. On Thursday morning, Daisha's younger sister, Jalen Fawkes, arrived. The 34-year-old woman worked as an accountant at a small firm in Cedar Rapids and had always been practical. Seeing her sister's state, she immediately took charge of the arrangements. "Daisha, honey, you need to eat," Jaylene said as she entered the kitchen, where her sister was sitting at the table with a half-finished cup of coffee. "When was the last time you had a proper meal?" Daisha looked at her with empty eyes. "I don't know. I don't want to." "That's not right. Mom wouldn't want you to behave like this." Jalen sat down next to her and took her sister's hand. "Remember how she used to tell us when we were little? Girls, life goes on, no matter what happens?" Daisha nodded, and tears began to flow down her cheeks again. "I miss her, Jalen. I miss her so much. I want to call her and tell her about my day, but then I remember—" "I know, sis. I miss her too." Gavin watched the scene from the doorway, his heart aching. In 11 years of marriage, he had never seen Daisha like this. Even when they had trouble conceiving, even when the doctors said they probably wouldn't be able to have children, she had found the strength to keep going. But the loss of her mother seemed to have drained all the life out of her. The funeral was on Saturday. St. Paul's Church was filled with people, Ella's school colleagues, neighbors, family friends. Pastor Davis spoke about what a wonderful woman Ella had been, how much she meant to her daughters, how proud she was of their accomplishments. Daisha sat in the front row between her husband and sister, clutching their hands and trying her best not to cry in front of the whole church. After the funeral, their closest friends and family gathered at their house. Jalen helped serve food and take condolences, while Daisha spent most of the time in her bedroom, claiming she had a headache. The guests gradually left, and by evening, only the three of them remained in the house. "Maybe I should stay a few more days," Jalen suggested as she cleared the dishes after dinner. "No, you don't have to," Daisha replied. "You have work and things to do. I'll manage." But she couldn't manage. A week passed, then another, and Daisha's condition only worsened. She took sick leave from work, citing stress, and spent most of her days in bed. Gavin came home from work and found her in the same position he had left her in that morning, curled up under the covers, staring at the ceiling. "Daisha, this can't go on," he said one evening, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "I understand that this is hard for you, but you have to try to get your life back." "Why?" Her voice was barely audible. "What's the point? Mom is dead and nothing will ever be the same." "But you're alive, and you have people who love you. You have a job you enjoy. Your coworkers ask about you, worry about you." Daisha turned to face the wall. "I'm not ready. I can't." The next day, Gavin met his best friend, Liam Goodman, at their favorite cafe near the office. Liam worked for an insurance company and was one of the few people Gavin could talk to openly. They had been friends since school, and Liam was a witness at his and Deisha's wedding. "She's not eating at all," Gavin said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "She's lost several pounds in the last 3 weeks, and she won't leave the house. I'm starting to get really worried." Liam frowned. "Have you seen a doctor?" "I tried to suggest it, but she refuses. She says she can handle it herself, but she can't." "No, she can't." Gavin sighed. "I think she needs professional help, a psychologist or a therapist, but how can I suggest it without offending her?" Liam thought for a moment. "Maybe present it as support rather than treatment. Tell her that many people seek professional help during difficult times and that there's no shame in it. It's worth a try." That evening, Gavin cautiously broached the subject. Deisha was lying on the sofa in the living room, covered with a blanket, staring at the TV screen, oblivious to what was happening on it. "Deisha, I wanted to talk to you," he began, sitting down next to her. She glanced at him but didn't respond. "I know you're going through a very difficult time. Losing someone close to you is always traumatic, and sometimes we need help to cope. Are you trying to send me to a psychiatrist?" There was a hint of irritation in her voice. "Not a psychiatrist, a therapist. They're different things." Gavin took her hand. "It's just someone who knows how to help people understand their feelings and get through difficult times. Lots of people go to therapists." Deisha turned away. "I'm not crazy." "I never thought that. You're just grieving, and that's normal. But I can see that it's hard for you to cope on your own. Maybe you should give it a try? Just a few sessions?" She was silent for a long time, and Gavin thought the conversation was over. But then Deisha said quietly, "Will you go with me?" "If you want me to, of course." "Then maybe I should give it a try." The next day, Gavin started looking for a suitable specialist. He looked through several websites, read reviews, and settled on Dr. Cody Howard. A 45-year-old man with an impressive resume, educated at Iowa State University, specializing in family therapy and grief counseling, with many positive reviews from patients. The first appointment was scheduled for Tuesday. Dr. Howard's office was located in a small medical center on the outskirts of Des Moines. Deisha was nervous on the way there, squeezing Gavin's hand in the car. "What if he decides there's something seriously wrong with me?" she asked. "Then he'll help you deal with it. That's his job." Dr. Howard was a tall, thin man with graying temples and attentive brown eyes. His office was decorated in warm colors, beige walls, soft furniture, and live plants on the windowsills. Books on psychology and several family photos stood on the shelves. "Tell me what brought you to me," he said, as they settled into chairs across from his desk. Deisha struggled to find the words to describe her mother's death and how her life had changed over the past month. Dr. Howard listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions, without rushing her or jumping to conclusions. "What you're feeling is perfectly natural," he said at the end of the session. "Grief is not an illness that needs to be cured. It's a process that needs to be gone through. My job is to help you get through it so that the pain doesn't consume you." Gavin attended the first few sessions with his wife, but then Dr. Howard suggested that Deisha come alone. "Sometimes people find it easier to open up when even their closest friends aren't around," he explained to Gavin after the fourth visit. "It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It's just that everyone has their own way of dealing with grief." Gavin agreed, albeit reluctantly. He wanted to be there to support his wife, but he understood the specialist's reasoning. "How is she?" Liam asked during their next meeting at a cafe. It had been 6 weeks since Deisha's mother died, and 3 weeks since she started therapy. "It varies," Gavin replied. "Sometimes she seems better. She started leaving the house and even went to the store last week. She cooks sometimes, but then the waves of sadness come back, and she can cry all day. But overall, is there progress? I think so. Dr. Howard says these ups and downs are normal. The main thing is that she's not stuck in one place." Indeed, by the end of the second month of therapy, the changes were more noticeable. Deisha returned to work, first part-time, then full-time. She began to take an interest in what was going on around her again, asking questions about Gavin's affairs and calling her sister. Of course, the sadness hadn't gone away. Sometimes Gavin would find her crying over her mother's photos or old letters. But now these moments didn't paralyze her completely. "I think therapy is really helping," she said one evening over dinner. "Dr. Howard is a very understanding man. He doesn't try to convince me to forget my mother or stop being sad. He just helps me understand that feelings can be experienced in different ways." Gavin smiled. "I'm glad you're comfortable with him." "Yes, he's special. He has a gift for seeing through people, for understanding what they really need." Something in her tone made Gavin look at his wife more closely, but Daisha had already turned away, busy with her plate. He decided he must have imagined it. May brought long-awaited warmth to Iowa, and Daisha greeted it with a smile on her face. It had been 2 months since she started seeing Dr. Howard, and the changes were striking. Not only had she returned to work full-time at the hospital, but she had also regained her interest in life. She hummed in the shower in the mornings, prepared breakfast with her usual enthusiasm, and took an interest in Gavin's plans for the day. "You look especially good today," Gavin said, as he watched his wife touch up her makeup in the hallway mirror. Daisha had truly transformed. Her eyes were sparkling again, her movements were more confident, and she smiled more often. "Thank you, dear," she replied, turning to him. "I have an appointment with Dr. Howard today, and then I think I'll go to the mall and buy myself something. It's been a long time since I've treated myself to something new." Gavin nodded, pleased with her energy, but something intangible in her behavior made him wonder. Daisha had become more attentive to her appearance. She bought new cosmetics, spent a long time choosing clothes, and even changed her perfume. She used to be a practical woman who didn't spend much time on her appearance, especially for doctor's appointments. "How long will your session take?" he asked. "The usual, an hour. Maybe a little longer if the doctor thinks it's necessary. He sometimes loses track of time when we're discussing something important." There was a warmth in her voice that Gavin hadn't noticed before. "Okay, see you tonight." Daisha came over and kissed him on the cheek, leaving a faint trace of lipstick. "See you later, honey." Gavin watched her walk to her car and noticed how she fixed her hair in the rearview mirror before starting the engine. It was a small detail, but for some reason it stuck in his mind. At work, he tried to focus on his current projects. The company's logistics department was going through a busy period. Delivery routes needed to be optimized and costs reduced. Normally, Gavin found such tasks exciting, but today his thoughts kept returning to his wife. Something about her behavior over the past few weeks had been bothering him, although he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Daisha had become more secretive. She used to talk in detail about her therapy sessions, what topics they discussed, what exercises they did. Now she limited herself to general phrases like, "Everything is fine," "We're making progress," or "Dr. Howard thinks I'm making good progress." When Gavin tried to get more details, she said she didn't want to repeat everything verbatim because it was personal work she was doing on herself. In addition, her phone habits changed. Daisha began to go into another room more often to talk, saying she didn't want to disturb Gavin while he was watching TV or working on his computer. And recently, he noticed that she had put a password on her phone, even though they had previously used each other's gadgets freely. "Maybe I'm just thinking too much," Gavin muttered, looking out the window of his fifth-floor office. Down the street, people hurried about their business, each lost in their own thoughts and problems. That evening, Daisha returned home around 8, carrying several shopping bags. "How was your day?" Gavin asked, getting up from the couch. "Great!" Her eyes sparkled. "The session was very productive, and then I found some really nice things. Want to see?" She showed him a new dress, elegant, a little more revealing than her usual style, and some expensive pearl earrings. "Very pretty," Gavin said. "What are they for?" "Just because. Dr. Howard says it's important to treat yourself to little pleasures. It helps keep you in a good mood." "Dr. Howard says a lot of things these days," Gavin remarked, watching his wife's reaction closely. Daisha froze for a moment, but quickly regained her composure. "He's a good professional. I'm grateful for his help. Is that wrong?" "Of course not. I just noticed that you quote him a lot. Maybe. He gives a lot of good advice." Daisha turned away and headed for the bedroom. "I'll get changed and make dinner." At dinner, she was unusually talkative, telling him about her colleagues at the hospital, her plans for the weekend, and a movie she wanted to see. But Gavin noticed that she didn't mention a single detail about today's therapy session, even though she had always shared her impressions before. The next day, he met Liam at their usual cafe for lunch. His friend immediately noticed his pensive mood. "Something wrong?" Liam asked, sipping his coffee. Gavin was silent for a long time, searching for the right words. "Liam, do you think a person can change that much in a couple of months?" "In what way?" "Deisha. She's completely different, and I don't know whether to be happy about it or worried." "But isn't that a good thing? You said the therapy was helping her." "Yes, it is. She's happy again, energetic, confident, but—" Gavin paused. "She's become secretive, and she cares too much about how she looks. She's buying new clothes, changing her hairstyle, using a different perfume." Liam frowned. "What's wrong with that? Maybe she just wants to feel attractive after that difficult period." "Maybe, but there's something else." Gavin lowered his voice. "She talks about her therapist all the time. Dr. Howard said this, Dr. Howard thinks that. It's like his opinion is the most important thing in the world to her." "Gavin," Liam leaned forward, "you don't think there's something going on between them, do you?" Hearing his suspicions out loud, Gavin felt a chill run down his spine. "I don't know what to think. Maybe I'm just being paranoid." "Maybe. Or maybe your intuition is telling you something." Liam thought for a moment. "Listen, do you know this doctor? Have you met him personally?" "Only during the first few sessions when I went with Deisha. He seemed like a normal professional, middle-aged, polite, competent." "What does he look like?" "Tall, thin, gray hair, quite attractive for his age, to be honest." Gavin fell silent, realizing the significance of his words. "I see." Liam leaned back in his chair. "But you know what, buddy? Don't jump to conclusions. Therapists have a code of ethics. They can't get romantically involved with their patients. It's a serious violation that could cost them their license." "In theory, yes, but in practice?" "In practice, people are people with all their weaknesses." Liam sighed. "Take my advice. Don't jump to conclusions. Observe a little longer. Maybe you're really overreacting." "What if I'm not?" "Then we'll have to figure it out. But first, make sure your suspicions are well-founded." Over the next few days, Gavin watched his wife's behavior closely. Deisha was still affectionate and attentive to him, but something intangible in her manner continued to bother him. She began to stay late at work more often, citing extra shifts or meetings with colleagues. Her therapy sessions also became longer. She used to come back after an hour and a half, but now she was gone for 3 or 4 hours. Dr. Howard suggested extending the sessions, she explained when Gavin asked about it. "We're working on deeper issues, and it takes time." "What kind of issues?" he asked. "Issues related to self-esteem, understanding my needs. It's hard to explain to someone who doesn't know anything about psychology." The tone of her answer was slightly condescending, which was completely out of character for Deisha. She had never spoken down to him before, even when they argued. On Friday, Gavin decided to conduct an experiment. He told his wife that he had an important meeting with clients that might run late, so he wouldn't be able to pick her up from the hospital as usual. "No problem," Deisha replied. "I have a session today too, so I'll drive myself." At 4:30, Gavin parked near the hospital and waited. Deisha came out at 5 o'clock sharp, got into her car, and drove toward the medical center where Dr. Howard worked. So far, everything matched her story. Gavin followed her at a distance, trying not to lose sight of her red Honda. She did indeed park at the medical center and went inside. Gavin waited a few minutes, then entered the lobby of the building and saw on the information board that Dr. Howard's office was on the 3rd floor. He climbed the stairs and walked cautiously down the hallway. The door with the sign, "Cody Howard, Family Psychotherapist," was closed. Muffled voices could be heard from inside. Gavin couldn't make out the words, but he recognized Deisha's laughter, light, easy, the way he hadn't heard it in a long time. He went back down to the lobby and waited in his car. Time dragged on. An hour passed, then another. Gavin began to get nervous. Sessions usually lasted no more than an hour, even with the recent changes. At 7:45, Deisha emerged from the building. Her hair was slightly tousled, and a satisfied smile played on her face. She got into the car and drove home. Gavin followed her, thinking about what he had seen. Maybe nothing special had happened, just a long therapy session. But then why did his wife's expression bother him so much? At home, Daisha acted as usual, talking about her day and asking about his non-existent meeting with clients. But Gavin noticed that she glanced at her phone several times and smiled as she read the messages. Over the weekend, he tried to talk to her about therapy again. "Daisha, are you happy with the results of your treatment?" "Of course. I feel much better." "Maybe it's time to stop? You've overcome your depression." She turned sharply toward him. "Why stop? Therapy isn't just about treating an illness. It's about working on yourself, understanding your needs and desires. Dr. Howard says I'm just beginning to discover my true potential." "Your true potential?" Gavin asked. "Yes. He's helping me understand what I really want out of life, not what others expect of me." There was something disturbing in her words, but Gavin didn't press the issue. On Tuesday, he followed his wife again. This time, she stayed in the doctor's office for almost 3 hours. When she came out, she stood by the car for a long time, talking on the phone. Gavin couldn't hear what she was saying, but he could see her laughing and gesturing. She was clearly enjoying the conversation. That night, after Daisha fell asleep, he carefully took her phone and tried to unlock it. The password was their wedding date. At least she hadn't changed that. Gavin scrolled through the messages but found nothing suspicious. However, he noticed that the call history had been cleared, which was unusual for Daisha. By the end of the week, his doubts had completely taken over. He needed to talk to someone, get another perspective. Liam was a good friend, but Gavin felt he needed a woman's opinion. And then he thought of Jalen. Daisha's sister lived an hour's drive from Des Moines. On Saturday morning, while Daisha was at work, she had taken on an extra shift, Gavin drove to Jalen's house. He didn't warn her he was coming, deciding it would be better that way. Jalen opened the door in her house clothes, clearly not expecting visitors. "Gavin, what are you doing here? Where's Daisha?" "She's at work. I need to talk to you." Jalen invited him into the living room and offered him coffee. Gavin declined. He was too agitated. "Jalen, I want to ask you something and I need an honest answer." "Of course. What's going on?" "Daisha, did she tell you anything about her therapist?" Jalen tensed. "What should she have told you?" "I don't know. Something personal, something that goes beyond the normal doctor-patient relationship." Jalen was silent for a long time, avoiding his gaze. "Jalen, please. I don't know what to think. Daisha has changed, and I suspect—" He couldn't finish. "What do you suspect?" she asked quietly. "That she's having an affair with that doctor." Jalen sighed and lowered her head. "Gavin, You know something, don't you? She asked me not to tell anyone. So it's true." Gavin felt the ground slip away beneath his feet. Daisha said she's in love, that this man understands her like no one else, that he helped her find her true self. Jalen looked up at him with sympathetic eyes. "I'm so sorry, Gavin. I tried to talk her out of it, told her it was wrong, that it would destroy your family, but she wouldn't listen." "How long has this been going on?" 3 weeks, maybe 4. She said at first it was just talking after her sessions, but then... Gavin, she says she's never felt so alive before." Gavin stood up and walked over to the window. Children were playing outside, their carefree laughter seeming like a mockery of his crumbling world. "What should I do, Jalen?" "I don't know. Talk to her. Maybe it's not too late to fix things." "What if she chooses him?" Jalen didn't answer, and that was answer enough. Gavin returned home in the evening. Daisha was already home, cooking dinner and humming a tune. When she saw him, she smiled. "Hi, honey. How was your day?" "Fine," he replied, trying to make his voice sound natural. Over dinner, they talked about everyday things, work, plans for tomorrow, a movie that was on TV. Daisha was lively and affectionate, as if nothing had changed. But now Gavin could see right through her act. He noticed how she smiled absently to herself from time to time, how her eyes glowed with an inner fire that had nothing to do with him. As she went to bed, she kissed him on the forehead, as she always did. "Good night, my love." "Good night," Gavin replied, knowing that sleep would not come to him that night. Sunday passed in agonizing anticipation. Gavin couldn't settle down. pacing from room to room while Daisha read in the garden, enjoying the warm May day. She looked peaceful and happy, glancing at her phone from time to time and smiling mysteriously. Each smile was like a knife to Gavin. By evening, he had made up his mind. He couldn't live with this lie any longer. Couldn't pretend he didn't know anything. He had to act. On Monday morning, after Daisha left for work, Gavin called Liam. "I need to see you. Right away." "What's wrong?" His friend's voice sounded alarmed. "Not on the phone. Let's meet at your place during your lunch break." "Okay, but you're scaring me, Gavin. There's something to be scared of." Liam lived in a small house on the outskirts of town. He was single and had never wanted a family, preferring freedom to family commitments. When Gavin arrived at his place at 12:30, Liam was already waiting for him with lunch ready. "Well, tell me," he said, seating his friend at the table. "You were right. My suspicions were confirmed." Gavin told him about his trip to Jaylene's and what he had found out. Liam listened silently, shaking his head occasionally. "Damn, buddy, I'm so sorry." "I don't know what to do, Liam. I feel betrayed, humiliated. 11 years of marriage, and this is how it ends." "Did you try to talk to her?" "What is there to talk about? She lied to my face, cheating on me with the man we trusted to help our family. That bastard took advantage of her vulnerability and she—" Gavin couldn't finish. "What are you going to do?" Gavin was silent for a long time, staring out the window. "I want to catch them together. I want them to know that their lies have been exposed." "And then what?" "I don't know. Divorce, probably. File a complaint with the medical board against that doctor. Get his license revoked." Liam nodded. "Sounds reasonable. But be careful, Gavin. Don't do anything you'll regret." "What do you mean?" "You're very angry right now, and that's understandable. But don't let your anger cloud your judgment." Gavin stood up and paced around the room. "Liam, I need your help." "What kind of help?" "You have a gun, I know. You showed it to me a couple of years ago." Liam paled. "Why do you need a gun, Gavin?" "For protection. I don't know how they'll react when I find them. That doctor might try to attack me." "Are you crazy? What defense? You're not going to—" "I'm not going to kill anyone. If that's what you're thinking, I just want them to understand the seriousness of the situation." Liam stared at him for a long time, clearly struggling with his doubts. "Gavin, this is a bad idea. A very bad idea. Please. You're my only friend. If you don't help me, I have no one else to turn to. What if something goes wrong? Everything will be fine. I just want to talk to them with something to protect myself." Liam stood up and walked over to the safe in the corner of the room. He stood there for a long time, not daring to open it. "Promise me you won't do anything stupid." "I promise." Liam opened the safe and took out a small revolver. "It's loaded. Be careful with it." Gavin took the gun, feeling its unexpected weight. "Thanks." "Gavin, I'm serious. If you hurt anyone with this thing, you'll ruin your life. Do you understand?" "I understand. I'm not stupid." But when Gavin left, Liam stood at the window for a long time, watching him go, and his heart was heavy. For the next 2 days, Gavin kept the gun in the glove compartment of his car, but he couldn't bring himself to act. He followed Daisha, watched her enter the medical center, and leave with a radiant smile on her face, but he couldn't bring himself to go up to Dr. Howard's office. On Wednesday evening, Daisha announced that she had a particularly important session the next day. "Dr. Howard said we've reached a critical point in the therapy. The session may run longer than usual." "How much longer?" Gavin asked. "It's hard to say. Maybe until 7 or 8 in the evening. Don't wait up for me." Gavin hardly slept that night. He lay next to his wife, who was sleeping peacefully, and thought about how everything would change tomorrow. Tomorrow, he would learn the whole truth. Thursday dragged on forever. At work, Gavin couldn't concentrate on anything and kept looking at the clock. By 4 o'clock, he couldn't take it anymore and told his colleagues that he wasn't feeling well. He drove home, took the gun from the glove compartment, and put it in his jacket's inside pocket. The weapon pressed against his ribs, reminding him of its presence with every movement. At 5:30, Gavin pulled up to the medical center. Daisha's car was already in the parking lot. He parked in the far corner and waited. From time to time, people came out of the building, patients of other doctors, nurses finishing their shift. But the windows on the 3rd floor, where Dr. Howard's office was located, remained lit. At 7 o'clock, Gavin couldn't take it anymore. He got out of the car and headed for the entrance to the building. The security guard in the lobby didn't even look up at him. Visitors in business suits were a common sight here. Gavin went up to the 3rd floor. The hallway was quiet. Most of the offices were already closed. Only a light was shining from under Dr. Howard's door. He moved closer and listened. Muffled voices could be heard from inside, a man's and a woman's. Gavin's heart was beating so fast that he was afraid they would hear him. Carefully turning the handle, he found that the door was unlocked. Pushing it open slightly, he peered through the crack. What he saw exceeded his worst fears. Daisha was sitting on the leather sofa in the study, her head thrown back. Dr. Howard was leaning over her, his hands clasping her face, his lips pressed against hers. She was hugging him around the neck, and there was such passion in that embrace, such abandon, that Gavin hadn't seen in their own marriage for many years. For a few seconds, he stood there mesmerized, unable to believe what was happening. Then rage overwhelmed him. Gavin yanked open the door and burst into the office. "What the hell is going on here?" Daisha and Dr. Howard instantly broke apart. His wife's face turned white as a sheet, and the doctor jumped up from the couch, trying to straighten his rumpled clothes. "Gavin!" Daisha gasped. "What are you doing here? What am I doing here? What are you two doing here?" Gavin slammed the door behind him and turned the key in the lock. "Did you think I'd never find out?" Dr. Howard tried to take control of the situation. "Mr. Banks, I understand that you're upset, but let's discuss this civilly." "Civilly?" Gavin laughed, but his laughter was bitter. "You're corrupting my wife, taking advantage of her vulnerability, and you want me to behave civilly?" "It's not what you think," Daisha began, but Gavin cut her off. "Not what I think. I just saw you kissing. How long has this been going on? How many times have you lied to my face?" Daisha stood up from the couch, trying to regain her dignity. "Gavin, you don't understand. Cody helped me find myself. He showed me what I really want out of life." "Cody?" Gavin felt bile rising in his throat. "You're calling him by his first name now? How sweet. And what do you want out of life, Daisha? To destroy our family for this charlatan?" Dr. Howard took a step forward. "Mr. Banks, I must ask you to leave my office. You are crossing boundaries." "I'm crossing boundaries?" Gavin pulled a gun from his pocket. "What have you been doing all this time?" At the sight of the gun, both men paled. Daisha pressed her hand to her mouth, and Dr. Howard raised his hands. "Gavin, put the gun down," Daisha said imploringly. "Please don't do anything stupid." "Stupid? What do you think I've been doing?" Gavin's hand was shaking, and he was struggling to hold the gun steady. 11 years, Daisha. 11 years I loved you, cared for you, and you betrayed me with the first man who showed you any attention." "That's not true," she cried. "Cody isn't just some guy. He understands me. He's using you. Can't you see that? You were vulnerable after your mother died, and he took advantage of that." Dr. Howard tried to intervene. "Mr. Banks, I understand your feelings, but your wife and I have developed a genuine relationship. We didn't plan it, but sometimes these things happen." "Shut up!" Gavin roared. "Don't you dare justify your filth. You have a code of ethics, an oath. You should have helped her, not seduced her." "Gavin, please listen to me." Daisha took a step toward him. "I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how. Cody and we love each other." Those words sounded like a death sentence. Gavin felt something break inside him. "Love?" he whispered. "Then what were all these years with me?" "It was different. You're a good man, Gavin, but with Cody I feel truly alive." "Really alive?" Gavin slowly raised the gun. "Now you're going to feel really dead." "No!" Dr. Howard shouted, lunging forward. Gavin fired. The bullet hit the doctor in the chest, and he collapsed to the floor, clutching his wound. Blood quickly spread across his white shirt. Daisha rushed to the wounded man, kneeling beside him. "Cody! Cody! Hold on!" Seeing his wife leaning over her lover, Gavin felt a new wave of rage. Even now, even after the shot, she was thinking not of him, but of that man. "Daisha!" he called. She looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. "Gavin, call an ambulance, quick!" Instead of answering, he pointed the gun at her. "Gavin, don't. I'm your wife." "No," he said quietly. "You were my wife. Now you're just a traitor." The second shot sounded duller than the first. Deisha fell next to Dr. Howard, their blood mixing on the office floor. Gavin stood over the bodies, feeling a strange emptiness. The rage was gone, leaving only a cold numbness. The gun fell from his hands and hit the floor with a thud. He stood motionless for several minutes, staring at what he had done. Then, as if in a fog, he walked to the door, unlocked it, and stepped out into the hallway. The hallway was empty. The shots had not attracted any attention. The walls of the building were thick, and most of the employees had already gone home. Gavin went down the stairs, past the security guard, who didn't even look up at him, and went out into the street. The May evening was warm and quiet. Children were playing somewhere in the distance, and the usual sounds of peaceful life could be heard. But for Gavin, that life was over. He slowly descended the steps of the medical center and sat down on the bottom step. He took his phone out of his pocket and stared at it for a long time, unable to decide who to call. Liam? The police? A lawyer? In the end, he just sat there, holding his phone and watching the cars go by. The drivers were rushing home to their families, to dinner, to their usual evening chores, and he would never go home again. Gavin Banks knew he had ruined his future. Arrest, trial, and prison awaited him. Perhaps life imprisonment, or even the death penalty. But right now, that didn't matter. All that mattered was that the lie was over. Betrayal had been punished. And no one could hurt him anymore because the pain inside him was so great that it drowned out everything else. He sat on the steps and waited for someone to find the bodies. He waited for the police to arrive. He waited for the end of his old life and the beginning of what would remain.